Hey, history buffs and curious minds. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that completely flips the script on what most of us learned in school about women's rights in America. So, picture this. It's the 19th century. The fight for women's suffrage is gaining steam, but the idea of women casting ballots is still seen as radical by many. Now, if I asked you when women got the right to vote, you'd probably say 1920, with the ratification of the 19th Amendment, right? And you'd be correct for most of the country. But there was one place, a rugged, sparsely populated territory, that was decades ahead of its time. I'm talking about Wyoming. That's right. The cowboy state, famous for Yellowstone and wide-open spaces, has another, more groundbreaking title, the Equality State. And they earned it way back on December 10th, 1869. On that day, Wyoming's territorial legislature passed a law granting all women over the age of 21 the right to vote and hold public office. This wasn't just a small step, it was a giant leap, making Wyoming the very first place in the entire United States and one of the first in the world to grant full suffrage to women. This was a full 50 years before the 19th Amendment made it the law of the land for everyone else. So the big question is, why Wyoming? Why did this frontier territory with more bison than people become such a pioneer for progress? The answer isn't a single simple thing. It's actually a fascinating mix of pragmatism, political maneuvering, and a genuine belief in justice. First, let's talk about pure practicality. Back in 1869, Wyoming was a brand new territory, and it desperately needed more people. We're talking about a ratio of 6 men for every 1 woman. Territorial leaders were trying everything they could to attract new settlers. One forward-thinking idea was that if they offered women rights that they couldn't get anywhere else, it would encourage more women and families to make the long, difficult journey west and put down roots. It was essentially a marketing campaign for the territory, using equality as the main selling point. They hoped that the promise of political and legal rights would make Wyoming a more attractive destination than other territories competing for settlers. Second, there was some clever and a little bit cheeky political strategy involved. The Democratic-controlled legislature passed the bill, and some historians believe they did it partly to annoy the Republican governor, John Allen Campbell. They might have assumed he would veto it, making him look anti-woman and scoring them political points. Others thought it was a way to poke the federal government in Washington, D.C. and get some national attention. But to their surprise, Governor Campbell, a supporter of women's rights, signed it into law. The gamble paid off, but not in the way some of the schemers had intended. But it wasn't all just politics and population counts. There was also a real underlying spirit of equality forged in the tough conditions of the Wild West. On the frontier, survival was a team sport. Women weren't just confined to the home, they were essential partners in every aspect of life. They ran ranches, managed homesteads, started businesses, and defended their homes right alongside the men. In a place where everyone had to pull their weight just to make it through the winter, the idea that women were somehow less capable just didn't hold up. Many pioneers simply saw it as common sense. If a woman could do the work of a man, why shouldn't she have the same right to vote as one? The true test came a couple of decades later. When Wyoming applied for statehood in 1890, Congress pushed back hard. They demanded that Wyoming revoke women's suffrage as a condition for joining the Union. It was a moment of truth. Would Wyoming cave to the pressure? The state's legislature sent a defiant telegram back to Washington that has become legendary. They said, and I quote, "We will remain out of the Union 100 years rather than come in without our women." They stood their ground, and Congress eventually relented. Wyoming officially became the 44th state, with its women's suffrage law fully intact. So the next time you think about the long, hard-fought battle for women's right to vote, remember Wyoming. They didn't just join the movement,